Welcome to Haunting History, the podcast that reaches back into the past for the events that shocked everyone. Tales of true crime, mystery, and the macabre. And when we're lucky, the stories where history and the people who lived it and the paranormal meet. Now, who doesn't live a good ghost story, right? Welcome back to Haunting History Podcast. This is Kat, your host, and this week we are doing something a little bit different. On May 9th, 1980, 4 men and 1 teenager robbed the Security Pacific Bank in Norco, California. Norco, located in Riverside County, was a sleepy little town with just over 19,000 people at the time. More known for its cow farms and horse ranches than for its crime statistics, Norco on that day would become the stage for one of the most epic rolling gun battles for its time. By its conclusion, 2 of the robbers were dead, 32 police units were destroyed or damaged by gunfire, 1 police helicopter was shot out of the air, 8 officers were shot and injured, and 1 sheriff's deputy was killed. 4 deputies involved in the incident would retire from service within a few months of the event. The incident would change not only the weapons deputies were issued, such was its impact that even today, it's still used in training law enforcement and personnel in anti-terrorism and survival. Deputy Rolf Parks with the Riverside Sheriff's Department would receive the Riverside Gold Heart and the Medal of Courage from the Riverside County Sheriff's Department for his actions on the afternoon of May 9th, 1980. And he's here today to tell his story.
Hello. I think today there seems to be a lot of media attention these days about the Norco bank robbery. Although it occurred 39 years ago, almost to the day, from where we're talking right now. There's been a couple of books that have been written about it. One's going to come out in June, in just a few weeks, called Norco 80
by Peter Houlihan.
Peter Houlihan. It's going to be a very detailed book. I think it'll be a bestseller, and with the potential to be made into a movie of some type.
There was a movie that was made really soon after that wasn't as accurate, correct?
Yeah, Rapid Fire doesn't even resemble the Norco bank robbery.
Interesting, and it's a tagline for that movie.
Yeah, that's a different story. I should probably, I don't know if we want to talk about it at the end. There's a story about it, but anyway, we'll just leave it at that.
You were only 24 at the time when this happened?
Well, no, I started law enforcement when I was 24, and so I had been there just about 3 years, and I was 27 when it happened.
You had actually given your notice 2 days before it happened that you were moving to another division. Yeah,
that's kind of interesting. When I started with the Riverside Sheriff's Department, I had grown up in Long Beach, California, so it's about 50 miles away from Riverside, and I'd never really been to Riverside. After about 3 years, I decided I wanted to come back closer to where I was raised and where my friends were. So I had submitted my resignation to the Riverside Sheriff's on May 7th, and I was planning to go to the Irvine Police Department here in Orange County. And so usually you think, well, you're giving you 2 weeks notice, and you're just going to sail through. You're going to take things easy. You're not going to get involved in anything big because you don't want to have to go to court on anything. You don't want to have to get involved in anything that's going to tie you up in Riverside if you're going to move somewhere else. Fate doesn't always follow that course of action.
A lot of the stuff online talks about how things have changed in the police department because of that day.
Yeah, I think it's important for the listeners to know that, the Norco bank robberies, it's 39 years old now. That's when it occurred, but you would think that about what I'm going to tell you would have happened like yesterday because of the type of weaponry that was used by the bank robbers against us, the deputy sheriffs at the time. The paradigm was that we were just armed with 38 caliber revolvers, shooting 6 shots, and we had a 12 gauge shotgun, and that was our armament for the vehicle. Our radios at the time, we had 3 police stations that were utilizing the same frequency at the same time. So you just had to wait your turn to talk. And other agencies like the Paris Police Department and the Elsinore Station, the Riverside Sheriffs were all joined in with the Riverside Station. And so all of that's going to come to bear in what is about to take place, and how things changed, because of this one incident that started the ball rolling for what has now become more of a modern way of equipping law enforcement. So just know that back in 1980, most bank robberies and stuff were usually committed by one person or two. Oftentimes, the method wasn't a weapon at all. It was a note of a threat that they were armed, and for a teller to give the robber some money.
And most of the time, I read that they were when a call came in regarding a bank robbery. Typically, it was a silent alarm that was accidentally tripped, not an actual robbery.
That's true too. Most alarms are accidentally activated and aren't real alarms at all. And and so we'll get into that when we start rolling with this thing. But the story takes a while. The listeners are going to have to be patient. It might be told in more than one episode. I'm not sure how long you run your program or your podcast.
However long it takes for you to tell the story is how long we are going to run it.
So just to continue with the paradigm. So that, most bank robberies were just like committed with notes, where one guy would come in with a gun, and maybe flash it. Maybe it was a real gun. Maybe it wasn't. Every now and then you might have somebody come in with a shotgun, but you very rarely had more than one or two people come into a bank, to steal money and rob people. So that was all about to change here in the afternoon of May 9th, 1980. So I was working a mid-watch that started at noon and went to 10 p.m. And it was a smaller watch because the day watch was coming in, and we covered for an hour or two until the larger swing shift came in later on around 5 in the afternoon. So in the briefing that day, one of my deputies who had more seniority on the department than I did, we were told in briefing that we were going to possibly have a riot in Rubidoux area of Riverside County. And only Glenn Belaski and myself were qualified to work in Norco because we had traffic training. And Norco was a contract city. So Glenn says, I'm working Norco today, you're working Rubidoux. So I could see where that was going. So he went off to Norco that day, and I was working in Rubidoux. And then at about 3:30 in the afternoon, I'm on the block that Rubidoux High School is, and I'm making a traffic stop. And that's when the buzzer came on that warned of some type of an in-progress call. And it came out as a robbery in progress at the Security Pacific Bank located at 4th and Hamner in the city of Norco. So I'm about, maybe 7 miles from Norco at the time, but I know the area very well, since I worked there a lot. And Glenn Belaski, who I just told you decided he wanted to work Norco that day, just happened to be at the intersection himself at a red light. And I don't think he really understood that this was an in-progress bank robbery versus a robbery alarm, because it was his intent to roll up by the edge of the building, one of the edges of the building, and take up a position until other units arrived, and take up defensive positions in order for somebody to come out of the bank and tell us whether it was safe or whether we had something in progress. What he didn't realize is when he turned down the street and started proceeding eastbound down 4th Street, that 5 suspects that you talked about, one of which was a juvenile, had just robbed the bank, and they were wearing masks, and they were wearing fatigues, and for all intents and purposes, they looked paramilitary. They were all armed with shoulder-fired weapons. You've heard, lots of people heard about the M16, the AR-15, and those are the type of weapons they were armed with. Much different than you've seen at any other bank robbery in the 1980s, or even in the, I'd say in the last two or three decades. And they begin shooting at Glenn's light bar, and he pulls into the driveway, and he faces the four adult bank robbers who are all firing shoulder-fired weapons at his vehicle. And his vehicle is lit up, like something you've never seen. It's a fusillade of rounds of ammunition that was hitting all over the vehicle. And he backs out of the intersection, or out of the driveway, into 4th Street. And by this time, all of his tires are shot out, and he comes to arrest because the vehicle can't move anymore. They essentially killed the vehicle. The robbers get into a Dodge Tradesman van, and to pause for a minute, they had kidnapped an individual owning that van at the Brea Mall in Orange County, about 30 miles away. And they wanted a vehicle in which they could transport their munitions, their weapons, in order to commit this bank robbery.
And he was tied up in the back of the van this entire time, correct?
They tied him up, and he was always, laying face down in the back of the van. And so, nobody knew that at the time. But that's why they happened to have that van. Billy Delgado, the 17-year-old, was the driver of the vehicle. And all of the robbers got into the van and started driving out the driveway past Glenn's car, police car, not far away, probably within I'd say 15 to 20 feet, because that's just where his car stopped. And then a big exchange of gunfire took place, and Glenn starts returning fire using his shotgun, and he blasts several rounds through the back end of the Dodge Tradesman van, and one of those pellets from the shotgun hits Billy Delgado right behind the left ear in a soft spot. That pellet went into his skull and into the neck area and severs a nerve, and Billy becomes totally paralyzed. And the vehicle crashes into a tree across the street, and so they're rendered stationary themselves. They get out of the vehicle, and the firefight continues with the four of them shooting at Glenn, who's still by himself. Glenn is able to shoot one of the bank robbers, George Smith, who is the leader of the group. Shoots him somewhere in the groin area, kind of the upper, I think it was the upper left thigh area. The suspects gather up a large quantity. They leave the money that they stole.
I know. I was going to bring that up. They only stole $20,000 and they left it in the van.
Yeah, but they had brought with them quite a few homemade hand grenades, which we might call IEDs, improvised explosive device, but in a sense they were homemade hand grenades that they had learned how to make using the anarchist cookbook as a guide. They gather up several hundred, if not thousands, of rounds of ammunition, and they start running out into the intersection while everybody's watching this bank robbery take place. And they start running to it's kind of an yellowish orange color Ford utility vehicle that has, I think it had like acetylene systems on it. It had oxygen and other type of large standing tanks in the back of it. And the driver of the truck sees these guys coming after him after watching all the shooting take place, and he gets out and just runs for his life. leaving the Dodge van, they encounter two other Riverside sheriffs. So Andy Delgado, who's no relation to Billy Delgado, and his brother Manny Delgado, down Hamner going south towards 4th Street, and comes to a halt just north of 4th Street and begins shooting at the bank robbers through a chain link fence. And Deputy Chuck Hill arrives on the scene. He stops across the street from where Glenn is on the north side of the street. Glenn's sort of on the south side of the street. Glenn's been shot now. He's screaming, loud. I need help. I need anybody. I need the Army, the Air Force, the Marines, whatever.
Now, they had said, tell me if this is correct. They had said that his car took over 200 bullets and then countless others that had hit the pavement and trees around it. And he was shot 5 separate times and still continued to shoot back at the suspects till he ran out of ammunition.
This is how it rolls. Later on, when I was talking to the detectives that investigated the follow-up on the bank robbery, Joe Kerfman, who was the lead detective, said that he could count 47 bullet holes in Glenn's car. Those are rounds that you could count, and which didn't represent all of the bullets that were going underneath the car
or through the windows,
and through the windows, that were all shattered and broken out. So there were several hundred more rounds that were fired at Glenn during that. I think it was about a 5-minute gun exchange when all of this has taken place.
That's what I forgot to mention, is that it happened within 4.5 minutes.
Yes. So Glenn's screaming. Chuck sees him over there by himself, and he's bleeding. So Chuck runs across the street while the bank robbers are shooting. And so he's trying to dodge bullets, and he gets over to Glenn, tries to give him whatever first aid he can, and then it says, let's get out of here. So they ran across the street back to Chuck Hill's vehicle. Glenn jumps and lays down in the back seat, and Chuck drives away from the scene with Glenn's legs still hanging out of the car. There was this understanding that he had some type of an artery that was bleeding, and he was losing a lot of blood fast. So Chuck Hill leaves the scene with Glenn Blasky in the back seat,
leaving Delgado there. Correct.
Leaving Delgado by himself on Hamner. Now the suspects get into that utility vehicle and begin driving northbound Hamner, and they're hitting vehicles out of the way so that they can make their escape. Chuck Hill eventually drives Glenn to the Corona Hospital, where life-saving procedures goes on. And now back to the scene when they drive past Andy Delgado, they're shooting his car to pieces. He gets underneath his car for protection because there's nothing else around, and he avoids getting shot or injured himself. And he can't, really explain, everything that was going on at the time. But he does put out a direction of the vehicle, and several people are leaving in it. And he wasn't quite sure if there were still suspects in the area that didn't get in the vehicle. And so that becomes an issue, throughout the chase, that they still thought that they had, or that there might be another crime scene or, suspects in the area, 4th and Hamner, when in fact they had all left, but nobody knew that. And remember, I told you, we're using a radio that's being used by 3 police departments. So now the bank robbers are going northbound on Hamner, leaving the city of Norco. They had parked 2 cars up by 7th and Hamner that were going to be their getaway vehicles from the van that they were going to use. They had extra ammunition and extra rifles and other equipment in those vehicles that they intended to transfer to. But since they were being pursued, they never made the stop. As they're leaving the city, another deputy, Gerald Reed, is coming southbound, and they start shooting at him, and they hit him in the leg, and he has to pull over the shoulder of the road to, to gather himself. And so he becomes the second deputy wounded at the time. The suspects just continue northbound Hamner, and when Daryl Reed finds that it's safe for him to proceed, he goes down to the bank at 4th and Hamner to seek help or from anyone that's down there. Now, at the time, there was nobody down there but Deputy Delgado, and that scene still stays active while several other sheriff's units from our department and police cars from the Corona Police Department descend on the area to look for additional suspects. So now you're looking at two crime scenes here. They're looking at an active scene at 4th and Hamner, and now you have an active armed pursuit of the suspects leaving the city, and everybody is using the radio at the same time. Things become kind of garbled at this time. The suspects go north on Hamner, and I was responding from the Rubidoux area, as I told you, and I'm just flying down Limonite Boulevard westbound as fast as I can. It was like a scene out of the movie Bullet, where you see cars bouncing up and down the street.
You're bottoming out.
And that was me. I'm bottoming out. Yeah, it's like I am trying everything I can do to get there because I'm listening to all this stuff going down.
Now, I had read that you were giving a ticket when you originally got the call.
Yeah. I mean, everything's happening so fast. So many things are happening so fast. It's like I started a ticket and I just had to throw everything back in the driver's face and proceed down the road. Stop what I was doing and start getting into this battle. Remember, I told you this was supposed to be a quiet 2 weeks, and it wasn't a very quiet 2 weeks at all.
It wasn't going as you had planned at all at this point.
No, this wasn't retirement at all. As I'm going down Limonite, I hear there's a couple of deputies that are down at Limonite and Hamner setting up a roadblock, waiting for the suspects. And since I know the area, I know that, you have to cover the other area too, which is a road called Schleisman off of Hamner before you get to Limonite. So I took an intersecting route, and as I proceed down this road, I can hear another deputy, Deputy Doug Borden, saying that he's encountering the suspects on Schleisman in the area of Wineville. And so I know that I'm only a block away from him at this time. So I had only this description of what was described by Andy as a yellow truck, but it was really an orange truck. And I see it coming towards me now. And it's, I think, and so I'm trying to think, is this the truck? It's not yellow, but it's orange. And yet you can see it's aggressively driving. I see them coming towards me, and I just pull to the right of the road as far as I can. And in Norco, we're in Miraloma, outside of Norco, and there's a horse corral that's right there. And there's really no place for me to go because it looked to me like they were going to come and ram right into the front or side of my car, the way they were driving aggressively. I had no idea what to do. There's no training for something like this. There's no training for what for bank robbers with shoulder-fired weapons, shooting at you to do. You kind of have to make things up as you go along.
In split seconds.
The only thing I could do was take a defensive position, and I leaned to my right across the. We were using bench seats at the time as opposed to bucket seats, and I was able to kind of get into a crevice between the radio and the shotgun and the seat, and I just kind of tried to cover myself with my arm over my head, and then as you may have heard in other shootings, how time and motion slows down. That's exactly what happens. I can hear the rounds hitting the side of my car. I can see glass flying all over the inside of the car. It was almost like snow. It was almost like chunks of glass and powder. And then you could see the suspects with their hoods, driving by. And you can see they're shooting, and you can see the retraction of their rifles. They're shooting. And it's like, this is when you feel like you're going to die. I mean, There's nothing I can do. And if they stop and get out of the car, I'm a dead man. There's nothing I can do.
What were you thinking?
But I was thinking I was going to die, and I was just wondering how much it was going to hurt to die. And there wasn't anything like where I could get a gun and sit up and shoot, because if you sat up, you were definitely going to be a target. To my fortune, they missed like killing me, but one of the rounds did strike and hit the top of my head and put a little furrow, if you would, across the top of my skull. And I kind of flinched and, threw my head back a little bit. And I go, well, that's one hit. And I was kind of waiting for the next rounds to come. They kept shooting and shooting and shooting as they went down the street. From where I'm at, the street becomes a street called Holmes, Holmes, and it's a winding road. And they're shooting until they get to a wind in the turn, and we're no longer in sight of one another. Thing is very, you can hear my engine running, screaming on the radio, but nothing around me. So I feel like I can sit up and look around, and I kind of like peek up over the seat as I'm looking around through the back window. The back window's all shot to pieces. I can't see them, and so now I'm thinking to myself, well, what do I do next? Do I go home or do I stay?
Which is probably your first instinct is, I'm just going to go home. Look, that was bad enough. Yeah. I'm done.
I mean, it's like, I'm leaving this town in less than 2 weeks, and it's like. But, when you hear that radio and all that screaming and shouting going on, it's like, if you're a cop and you're blue, you're in the fight, and you're going to be in the fight until it's over or until you die. It's as simple as that. When
I read that you did a U-turn and went after them, I was like, he not only made it's crazy enough to me to make the decision to continue. I mean, clearly I'm not a police officer. But then when I'm like he did a U-turn and went after him. That's like you were committed from that second on. Like, that's it. I'm in it.
That's true. And I was committed into it for a long time. I was the deputy longest involved in the chase from beginning to end. And I was rather persistent. I was rather angry that they had shot me, shot my friends, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. And I made that U-turn and proceeded westbound on Home Street. And as I started driving down the road, I caught up to them at first glance. And they were, I'd say maybe 100 yards to 150 yards out in front of me. And all of a sudden, it's the blast of the rounds again. Bang! Just everything's coming. There's three guys shooting at me. It's Manny Delgado, George Smith, and Russell Harvin. And the vehicle's now being driven by Chris Harvin, the other brother of Russell. And it's like, I suddenly realized, these guys really do have shoulder-fired weapons, and nobody had really said that. And even though I had seen them, it's like, man, they are just plastering me. There's nothing I can do here but kind of slow down and give them as much distance as I can so that I don't get so close that they take aim at me and shoot me in the head. So now I'm Deputy 3 that's been wounded, but I'm able. So the road comes to an end at Etowanda Street and turns northbound on Etowanda. We're still in Miraloma. And I follow them up the road, and they're still shooting at me. And then I see Deputy Herman Smith, who was one of my academy classmates. He makes a left turn from Limonite onto Etowanda. And then you see these three guys in unison stop shooting at me and start shooting at him. And you just see his vehicle just explode like a bomb had gone off. And then they continue through the intersection. Two other deputies were now at Limonite. Dave Madden on the east side and Wayne McDaniels on the west side. And they shoot Wayne McDaniels in the shoulder through the windshield. Herman had been shot in the leg through the door and was the fourth deputy shot. Now Wayne McDaniels is the 5th deputy shot. I stopped next to Herman's car, and I shot out to him, and I asked him if he's okay. And he sits up, and he gives me a nod, and he gave me the sign that he was okay. Because now I have to make a decision. If he's got in a life-threatening situation, I'm going to have to take him to the hospital and stop the chase. But he looked good enough that he could handle himself. So I continue the chase by myself for the moment, crossing Limonite, and I'm watching the suspects as they're shooting at me, and you could see one of them was crouched down on the back end of this pickup, and you could just see him dialing into my windshield, and I could see a round come through the windshield just over my head. And I had to stop. I had to pull over and stop because I knew they had me dialed in. And just as that happened, 2 highway patrol units passed me on the left. Bill Crow, Officer Bill Crow is leading Officer Doug Ernst in 2 police car or highway patrol cruisers going northbound on Etiwanda. And so I sit there for a while thinking they're going to get plastered here. It's not going to go well for them because they're getting really close to the suspects.
Are they not aware of the weapons that the robbers had? So
the highway patrol and the Riverside sheriffs do not have direct communications with one another.
So
in other words, I can't talk to them. They can't talk to me. However, some of those guys carry scanners, so they can hear us talking, and that's how they got into the chase. Is that they had scanners on, they could hear the chase going on, and so they were doing what they were doing. And there was no way for me to warn them off because I couldn't talk to them directly. I proceed down Etiwanda, and I turn a couple streets south of Harupa, and as I'm going down the road, I don't see them. I don't know where they are. And then I decided, well, I'm going to turn left on Marlette Street. And I turn left on Marlette. And just as I turn Marlette, guess what? The suspects are turned left on Marlette themselves, about a block ahead of me. And they're shooting at me. They're shooting at the 2 highway patrol officers. And things are just getting nuts at this point. I mean, well, it's been nuts. But as I go down the road, I told you Deputy Dave Madden, who had been at Limonite and Etiwanda, he was behind me now, and he was telling me about my one of my, I guess it was the left front tire had gone flat, and I should pull over and get into his car. And so as I look around, I guess I can kind of sense that the car's leaning to the left, and I'm leaning to the right, over the seat and over the below the dashboard, trying to stay below the gunfire. And I just told Dave to follow the guys because somebody needed to chase them and stay in the chase no matter what. Somebody from Riverside Sheriff's. So he continues the chase, and I stop at the intersection of 54th and Marlette. I get out, I take my shotgun with me, and I'm sort of standing there on the road when another deputy, Fred Chisholm, comes up alongside, and he picks me up. And then I direct him to go down to the end of the road on Marlette. And we go down to Bellevue and we turn right. And we come up to a scene and there's 4 cars stopped in the intersection or on the street a block away. And I go, this isn't good. And I hear somebody say that the suspects are out of their vehicle in the area. It turned out to not be true. But I get out of the car and I start crawling through the bushes, or I don't know, it's kind of a tall grass on the edge of the road. And I look to my left, and I can see Doug Crow's been shot, and Doug Ernst is tending to giving him first aid. I crawl through the bushes. When I get over, I think it was called Dodd Street. Nobody's there. The suspects aren't there. I start to walk back, and now I see Deputy Tony Renard from the Sheriff's Department. He was shot leaning over on his side. Front of his car is blasted with rifle rounds and such. And Deputy Rudy Romo's treating to his medical needs. So I motioned to Fred, let's get back in the car. I don't know where these guys are. Right now, nobody's chasing the suspects. Everybody's either out of action or shot. About this time, the city of Riverside had a police helicopter, and that helicopter did have our frequency in it, so we could talk to him. We could talk back and forth. So now I can hear him talking about where the suspects are at. Nobody's following him, but he's a little mixed up on the names of the streets and the direction he's going. I'm telling Deputy Chisholm to go over, keep going west on Harupa, and listening to the helicopter, he was saying they're going northbound, they're going southbound, and we're like doing a donut out in the middle of the street trying to figure out where these guys are at because we don't know which direction to go. So finally, I just look up and I could see the helicopter, and I could see that it's west of us. I go west and follow the helicopter, and then they say that the suspects are now getting on to the 60 freeway and transitioning to the I-15 freeway, sort of at the west end of Riverside County. So kind of reviewing things. Let's see, we had 4 or 5. So now we had Deputy Renard and Officer Crow shot. So now it's, what are we at? We're at 7 now.
That's what I was to say. That's 7.
It's just getting crazy. They proceed to get on to the Interstate 15, and I direct Deputy Chisholm, to take the ramp and follow them. And at this time now we can see where they're at. They're at the far end of the cloverleaf itself, the turnoff, getting onto the 15, and so we're I don't know, maybe 200 yards from them. Now they're not shooting at me, and what I didn't know and found out at a later time, they were actually shooting at a San Bernardino helicopter that was out overhead. I didn't see where they were, but they were shooting at this Hughes 500 helicopter, a jet helicopter run by the San Bernardino Sheriff's, who are now getting actively involved in the chase themselves. One of those rounds that was fired hit one of the skids, and it ricochets through the bottom shell of the helicopter and hit the radio equipment inside the helicopter and starts an electrical fire with smoke coming out. And this was obviously a bad situation for them, that the suspects had dialed them in. They were hitting the plane, and now they had an onboard fire. So fortunately, they were close to Rialto Airport, and they made a forced landing. They didn't crash. They made a forced landing at Rialto Airport. So, I mean, how often do you see a police helicopter being shot down?
No, we're at like 15 or 20 police units or sheriff's units and a helicopter.
I can't tell you how many cars it shot up.
And we're only into it like 25 minutes or 20 minutes or something.
Yeah. So as we're going down the 15, there was this big 18-wheeler that was in front of us between me and them. And I say, let's just get behind this 18-wheelers, and hopefully they won't shoot at us, and we can just like be under cover while following them. And it pulls off to the road to the side, and guess what? The curtain opens, and on comes the rifle fire onto our vehicle. You can hear the rounds striking the vehicle. You can hear it striking the ground. It's really strange to be shot at in that manner. I think, most of us, when we go to the police range and qualify with our weapons, we're used to how a bullet sounds when it's going away from us. But when it's coming towards you, it's a whole different thing. Especially in rapid fire. I mean, in a constant for 20 minutes now. Yeah. It sounds much differently, especially when it hits the ground, because it sounds like somebody's cracking a whip. It's like, you could hear this bang, bang, like a whip's being cracked or something. For a while there, I thought we were being shot at from behind, but it was just the rounds hitting the ground behind us and making a snapping sound versus a ricochet sound. So anyway, here we are. once again, we're in the lead. Nobody else is around. It's just us. And now we're heading northbound on the 15. So as we go down the road, they stop shooting. So we got moved up a little closer, maybe thinking that maybe they had run out of ammunition.
Little did you know.
And right about this time, a highway patrol unit comes along our right side. Now he's supposed to yield to me. I'm the one leading this thing, but he decides he's going to run up on these guys. And then the next thing you know, you see an explosion in the air. And one of those hand grenades that I talked to you about goes off in the air, and all of a sudden they put on the brakes, and now we pass them.
You're like, oh, that's right. We're the leaders.
Yeah.
You stay right there.
Yeah. And then we go a little bit further, and then another one goes off in the air. And you can feel the shrapnel hitting the vehicle. What they had done was they had put together using 12-ounce beer cans. They had put in a PVC pipe, kind of like a pipe bomb. It had smokeless gunpowder in it that was compressed and packed and sealed on the end like a pipe bomb would be. And they had that in the middle of the can, and then surrounding that were cement nails, glass, and other type of anti-personnel stuff that they put in there, ball bearings, etc.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
The fact that they had, their plan was to rob a bank, and they left the money in the van. The first opportunity they had to try and escape, they left the money, but they had these pipe bombs and all this ammunition. Their intent wasn't bank robbing. Their intent was to kill anyone who got in their way. Like, that was more of their intent than actually stealing any money.
That was their intent, that if they were going to do everything they could, kill every officer that got in their way, if they got apprehended or if they were being chased. They were not going to go to jail. And they prepared for it in that manner by having bought shoulder-fired weapons, consisting of AR-15s, HK-91, and an HK-93. Those are German-made assault rifles, similar to the American rifles. And they had learned how to shoot them in an area known as Lytle Creek, and which is off the 15 off of Sierra Street. So little did we know that that's where they were going. We're going down the freeway. Our vehicle had been hit by so many rounds that the radiator was now boiling over. Our car starts chugging, jerking back and forth. All of the water or coolant that's in the radiator is going out. Steam is coming out from underneath the hood. And it was pretty obvious that we weren't going to be in this chase any much longer, in this vehicle anyway. So I radioed to the people behind that somebody else was going to have to take over at this time because our vehicle's dying. And right at this moment, the suspects get off on Sierra Street, and they release another hand grenade into the air. And then I get passed by Jim Evans, Deputy Jim Evans. I get passed by Highway Patrol. I get passed by, I think, Ontario Police. I get passed by just about everybody. We get off on Sierra, and our car dies right there at the 15. And so we get out of our car, and basically we get passed by, I would estimate, about 30 police vehicles that had caught up to us at this point, and now we're passing us. Kind of feeling, some frustration here that I'm not in this chase anymore. But then the last car in the chase is being driven by Deputy Mike Jordan, or Detective Deputy Mike Jordan from Riverside, and he picks us up. And we follow as the last car in the chase at this point. The suspects go into the Lytle Creek area, which is the Cleveland National Forest. Lots of trees, winding roads. And the suspects get off on a fire road, and they proceed into an area known as Barton Flats, which is kind of a camping area. But I mean, the road's really rough. You can't drive very, very fast on it because it's very gravelly, potholes, up and down, all that kind of stuff. Having said that, you're still probably driving 30 or 40 miles faster than the speed limit for the area. And I see a person on the side of the road. He's got a rifle in his hand. And I mean, it's a citizen. And I stop and I ask the guy for his rifle, and I tell him that, there's these guys, bank robbers going down the street. Can I use your rifle? And he says, "Oh, you can, but I don't have any ammunition. I fired it all." He had a 30-06 rifle. I go, damn it. So then we keep going down the dirt road, following the dust. And we can hear one of our detective sergeants ahead of us had a radio that could communicate with another San Bernardino helicopter that had replaced the other one that had been shot down. It was overhead. And unfortunately for Jim Evans, he was having to wait for the helicopter to tell Sergeant Bender what was ahead of him, and then Bender would relay it to Deputy Evans. So there was this delay factor that we couldn't talk on the same frequency with the helicopter at the time. And I kind of forgot to say that, that other scene is going on the same frequency down back at 4th and Hamner. And you can see how there's this fog of battle and who's going to get the talk and who's not. You've got two battles essentially going on at the same time. One's real and one isn't. But the one that's not real, nobody knows if the suspects are around. They're going door to door, house to house, building to building, clearing the area to make sure there weren't any suspects going on down there. So all of that is keeping Jim Evans from getting the information he needs to try and stay alive. And it's a windy switchback kind of road that we're going through. There's no name for it. It's just in Barton Flats.
And how far are you behind Jim Evans?
I'm probably a half mile behind at this point. We stop again. I see another guy with a rifle. I ask him for the rifle. And he hands me the rifle, and then he hands me the ammunition, and it's a .22. I was kind of like disappointed, but at least we had a rifle. We could put some distance factor in it. Then we continue down this bumpy road, as I was telling you, and I'm trying to load this weapon, which is I'm probably dropping more rounds on the floor than I'm putting into the gun itself, but I got at least 6 or 7 rounds into it.
Well, let's not forget that you're also probably bleeding from a head wound currently.
Yeah, and I got glass in my eye, which I didn't know. And I mean, my whole head is full of glass and glass shavings, and my face is full of all this stuff. So we get to this horseshoe-shaped canyon, and they were switching back and coming back towards us, but across this gulch. So I'm probably 150 yards across the gulch from the road that they're about to drive on. And all of a sudden, I hear Jim Evans say that he's hit. You can hear all these guys, all the suspects are shooting at once. I mean, it sounded like machine gun fire. It was just loud. It was echoing. It was all over the place. So what had happened was there was a washout in the road that they were driving on, and they couldn't get past it. And so they got out of their truck and started walking down the hill. And we were talking about it before. They weren't going to be taken. They weren't going to be captured. So they were walking down the road, and it was their intent to shoot everybody that got in their way. What happened was Jim Evans took a fusillade of rounds through the windshield, comes to a stop, gets out of his car, runs around to the back, shoots 6 rounds from his .38 at a distance of 50 yards at the suspects, and he actually hits Chris Harvin in the side of the rib cage, but our rounds aren't very effective at this range. It hits him in the rib cage and just kind of slides around it. It never goes into the body cavity. So he's basically got kind of a flesh wound itself. And that's the kind of weaponry we had at the time. And they're still continuing down the road, walking down the road.
Towards
him and all the other cars, all those 30 cars that were in front of us. The next unit that was behind Deputy Evans was a San Bernardino sheriff's unit with DJ McCarty, who was actually off duty, and Jim McFerrin. McCarty had picked up a fully automatic M16 out of the armory at the West Valley Station. Got picked up by Jim McFerrin in the parking lot, and DJ McCarty here, he's wearing a red jacket and his uniform pants. He doesn't even have his gun belt. He was trying to hand the rifle to Jim, and when Jim said, "Just get in the car." So now here they are. They're the next ones being fired at, and the rounds are just devastating. DJ says he's trying to dig a hole beneath. He got out of the unit, and he's trying to dig a hole in the ground behind the right front tire of the vehicle to try and get some kind of cover. He says he looks up, to see sort of the legs of the suspect, but he can see Jim Evans on the ground. Jim had gotten hit in the face and fell on his back and died on the ground right there in front of him. DJ knew that he was going to be next if he didn't do something, and so he wasn't extremely familiar with the M16, but he did figure out how to charge the weapon, and he reaches up over the top of the hood of this police car that he's in, and the rifle is upside down because he knows if he sticks his head up, he's going to get hit like Jim Evans. So he just sticks his arms up, and he starts shooting his M16. And the suspects now hear that they're getting return fire. DJ's rounds weren't effective at all, but the sound of the M16 scared him. But DJ gets hit in the arm. Because remember I told you he's wearing that red jacket. They shoot him in the arm, so he's the next deputy shot. And but they decide to turn and run up the hill. Now I see these guys. I'm down the hill and I'm looking up at these guys, and I can see them. I try to get to a place between the forest trees because there's a lot of trees. I can kind of see them. I can kind of not see them. And I bring the rifle up and I shoot around right in the middle section of them. I don't see anybody drop, and they're running up the hill, trying to save their lives. I run back to the back of my unit. I start tracking them, but I'm in the trees. I can't shoot at them because there's too many trees in the way. And that was the only round I got to fire, was that 122 round at the front of my car.
At the time, did you know that Deputy Evans had been killed?
Yeah. There were the people, there was additional radio traffic after the suspects fled. People were able to talk on our frequency, and I was able to hear that, confirming that Jim Evans was dead. We kind of sat there for a moment, and then a few minutes later, a San Bernardino city, I believe it was the city police, there was a small contingent of SWAT officers from their city, was driving up the road, and they had rifles with them, and they went up the hill and sort of took command of the scene, because we're in San Bernardino County, we're not in Riverside County anymore. So this is their area. The helicopter's still flying overhead. He doesn't see where the suspects went because of the forest and the trees. Then another car pulls up behind me, and it's two people who identify themselves as assistant sheriffs from San Bernardino. They want to know what's going on, and I kind of give them a little bit of a rundown. And then I hear that DJ McCarty is being walked down the hill because he's wounded and shot, and the helicopter is going to land and take him to Loma Linda Hospital. It's, about 20 miles away. And that was, for the first time, I thought about myself. I hadn't thought about it. I go, somebody check me out. I have no idea what I look like. And I had another deputy look at my head. So you got shot? I go, yeah. I said, you're bleeding? Yeah, I know. Am I okay? And it's like, well, you got to get checked out too.
And it seems like it had been hours, but the entire time from the bank robbery until they escaped into the forest, temporarily at least, was only 43 minutes or something?
So from the time the bank robbery, from the time of the bank robbery, or from the pursuit till where the pursuit ends and Jim is killed is approximately 58 minutes.
58.
So I was in the chase for quite a while.
Your car withstood it a little bit longer, and you withstood it a little bit longer.
So I got there in 3 police cars because they killed my first 2 police cars, and I got there in the 3rd one.
So you finally went to the hospital when they took McCartney?
Yeah, I didn't know if I was going to go because I have to say there's a lot of emotions that go through you. You know, when you go through terror from. Remember when they were shooting at me? I thought I was going to die. It's terror. I think you're going to die. You're kind of scared. You don't know if you even want to stay in this chase any longer and go home, or do you want to run or follow these guys? And then you get anger, and I was pretty angry that all this was happening in front of me. And so I argued with the 2 assistant sheriffs from San Bernardino, said, I'm not going. I said, I got to finish this thing. And so then my guys took me aside and said, you got to go. You got to go. So I got into the helicopter with DJ McCarty, and we flew out of the canyon. And so that ended things for me for the day. They landed us on the roof at Loma Linda Hospital. I was kind of by myself. They took DJ off there were some other deputies there, and I was kind of there by myself. And they're in the emergency room, and I just kind of, let me call my wife, So I called my wife to tell her I was okay, and I started crying. I just couldn't believe I was in this kind of situation, but at least I was alive. She said that she had just gotten a call that a helicopter was taking me to the hospital and I'd been shot in the head.
Wow. You technically had been.
Yeah. And anyway, she was glad to hear that I was okay. I wasn't dead. I mean, the assumption was I was dead or near death, and when I really wasn't. So then after that, when you're in that fight or flight and the adrenaline is running, you don't feel pain. You don't feel anything really. I was now in a safe place. I'd been sitting on a gurney in the ER maybe for 15 or 20 minutes. And all of a sudden my right eye just starts hurting like you can't believe. And I'm screaming. I go, my eye. And the doctor comes running in and I'm screaming, is there something in my eye or something? It's hurting real bad. So he puts a dye in my eye and says, oh, there's a piece of glass sliding around in there.
Which you'd had in there for that probably entire time since you were shot at.
Yeah. And so I didn't feel any of that pain. None. I had no idea if there was a glass fragment rolling around in my eye, scratching the outside of my eye. So, I got x-rayed and I got picked up by one of my sheriff sergeants later on in the evening and taken back to Riverside Station where I met with Sheriff Clark at the time. Gave him a little synopsis about what had happened and such. And then they gave me a couple of administrative days off to gather myself, which I was in need of. And so that's how things ended for me on that day, on May 9th. The 4 suspects had basically jumped off the road and gone down into the ravine and were hiding throughout the night. And they split up in the morning and went in different directions. This area is the site of Mount Baldy. So if you live in the LA, Orange County area, San Bernardino, everybody knows where Mount Baldy is. And things had gone down into freezing temperatures overnight. So in the morning, Assistant Sheriff, I guess that would be Under Sheriff Floyd Tidwell, was driving into Barton Flats with his attaches with him. They see 2 scruffy-looking guys walking through the wash, and they go, could this be some of them? And they draw down on them, and it was the Harvin brothers. It was Chris and Russell Harvin. Chris, as I told you, had been shot by Deputy Evans, but it wasn't a very penetrating wound based on the type of ammunition they were carrying. 38 110-grain bullets, not very effective at 50 yards. And they take the Harvin brothers into custody. So now there's two other suspects out there. San Bernardino sheriffs really didn't have a SWAT team. At the time, they had people with rifles, and but not trained. So they call in the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department's Special Enforcement Bureau, which is their SWAT team. And their 62-man SUV unit entirely came to assist in the manhunt for the remaining two suspects. In one area, they encounter George Smith, who actually surrendered and called out to the deputies because remember I told you he'd been shot by Glenn Belasky back at the bank, and he gets taken into custody. And then the last guy is Manny Delgado, and then he's seen in a different area. And when the LA sheriffs encounter him, he was only armed with a handgun at the time. His rifle was never found. He decides he's gonna take up arms against the deputies that are responding, and he didn't make it. Let's just say he was shot and died of his wounds. So now it turns out through ballistics that it was actually Russell Harmon is the one that killed Jim Evans by shooting Jim in the head.
But he didn't get any longer sentence than the other two.
The jury convicted them of two murders, which is Jim Evans, the death of Billy Delgado, since he was involved in the felony robbery of the bank. So the felony murder rule applied to Billy Delgado on the other suspects. They were convicted of two murders, 44 and 44 felonies. We, those of us that survived the gun battle, we all met for a group therapy session about a week or two after the bank robbery, and we all told our stories to one another about how things went for us and the stress and everything that it placed on us and how things were affecting us in our lives.
Do you stay in touch with them?
So I stay loosely in touch with them. A little bit with DJ McCarty, a little bit with Andy Delgado. And then the others, we have a reunion about every 10 years. 2020, I would assume in May of 2020, we'll have another reunion. I don't know that, but probably. It's been a big deal in law enforcement. The fact that, to review everything, you had 8 deputies wounded, 1 killed, a helicopter shot down, IEDs or hand grenades are being used against us. What they had left behind at the scene were shotgun-launched rockets and grenades and Molotov cocktails. If they had been able to launch those things at us, we may have not made it to Barton Flats or to Lytle Creek. That van was heavily loaded with major explosive and flammable devices used to launch at us out of a shotgun like a mortar and a hand throw at us as well. It was unbelievable what they had brought to the bank robbery to make this thing happen. And we're just fortunate that then only one of us was killed. I think probably all of us thought we were dead men at one time or another during the chase, and I was one of them.
In the aftermath, how did it change you?
So, I'll have to say, following a major shooting, probably even sometimes the most inconspicuous type of shootings, those things replay in your mind a lot. They don't go away. This was not so much a gunfight as it was a war zone, or it was ongoing. Now today, you would think, well, yeah, we see that a lot on the air. You've seen all these terrorist bombings and shootings that are occurring in schools and college campuses and concerts. The incident in San Bernardino. That's kind of what you see today is not what you saw back in the day. You didn't have any of those things going on back in 1980. That's kind of why it made such big news and why it's so active today in everybody's interest. What happened out there? What happened in the Great Norco bank robbery? So as a result, the Sheriff's Department now has a fleet of helicopters They have a bomb disposal unit, and they have a West End and a East End SWAT teams, and other special teams, things that didn't exist before. And, of course, an advanced radio communication system, so where now you can communicate with other agencies on the radio. And if you have more than one thing going on, you can change frequencies to another and handle two on the radio at the same time, but on different frequencies. That one chase dramatically changed the Riverside Sheriff's Department. It dramatically changed how law enforcement would have to handle a similar situation if it were to happen again. And of course, everybody knows that a similar one happened in North Hollywood a few years later, where guys with machine guns did a bank robbery and there was a big shootout that took place. So now we see patrol rifles in the car. So now you see a lot of, if not most police agencies now have their own assault rifles in the car, so that if they're met with those kind of weapons, you can answer in kind at the same time as shooting. I can only say that you have no idea the devastating effect of what being under fire from a shoulder-fired weapon is. It pins you down. You can't move. You can't do anything. It takes over the area and the space around you until they stop shooting. I'm happy all those things happen, not only for Riverside Sheriffs, but everywhere else. When I went to the Irvine Police Department on May 19th, just 10 days after the bank robbery, of course I had my story to tell to them. And for the next 2 years, they had me make a movie of the Norco bank robbery, and at the time using rudimentary type of things such as slides and a cassette tape and such to make an hour-long presentation of the Norco bank robbery, which you can see on YouTube. And I was talking with Sheriff Smith at the 30-year reunion. He said he had no idea what was going on until I made that movie. And it's been shared in virtually every police academy, I think, in the United States and several countries outside of the United States as something to watch and as something to use as a tool in order to, how would you fight that battle today? And I'm happy to say it looks like we're in good shape. We can fight that battle today.
What? Tell us before we go. Tell us what you're doing now.
So I did after I went to Irvine Police Department. I served there for another 30 years. I worked field training. I worked SWAT for 17 years. I was a school resource officer for several years, and then I was a police detective investigating arson crimes, and retired without ever being involved in another shooting after May 9th. Today, I work for the city of Los Angeles as a background investigator in the civilian capacity. So I do police and fire backgrounds. So I'm still associated with the law enforcement community, bringing on good police and firemen to serve the community of Los Angeles. I will say that there were all those deputies that went to the Norco bank robbery, Chuck Hill, Glenn Belaski, and Andy Delgado. They all medically retired within 6 months of the bank robbery.
Really?
Yeah. And the on-duty sergeant that was in the field at the time also retired medically. Well, it's a stress medical, if you will, that people do. And for me, I think I was fortunate by making that Norco film that I was able to put all my thoughts into that thing for 2 years, that it actually helped me get through the PTSD, if you will, that comes with a major shooting like that. And I think if it hadn't been for that, I would wonder whether I would have taken a stress medical. But I was able to handle it through a positive means and make something worthwhile to the law enforcement community in this country and in other countries. I have maintained communications with Jim Evans' wife, Mary, over the years. And Jim had one son at the time, James Evans Jr. He's like 35 now.
And a stepdaughter.
And Jim Jr. is now a law enforcement officer with Homeland Security in the Riverside, Orange County, and LA County area. And so he's kind of followed in his father's footsteps going into law enforcement. And he's got married a couple of years ago and has a child. So I keep in touch with them.
And then I have one more question before I let you go. You didn't receive, and the deputies that were honored with the gold medal, and what was the other one? I lost my paper, but...
Well, I have the Medal of Courage.
But that wasn't for 20 years after the event. What took so long?
So there was a lot of controversy with Sheriff Clark and the Riverside Sheriff's Association as to how we were so unable to properly respond to the bank robbery with such small munitions that we had to ask everybody else for help. Couldn't communicate properly with one another. There was some animosity that Jim could have lived if he had better communications.
If he would have heard the helicopter.
Maybe if we had patrol rifles or something like that, we could have stopped the pursuit before, from going on as long as it did. Maybe we could have stopped it in Norco or somewhere close by without having it to run into a forest, 50 miles away and trying to capture them that way. So there was animosity between the sheriff administration and sheriff's deputies. And so there was resentment on everyone's part. And it wasn't until another Sheriff Smith, Larry Smith, 20 years later, felt that maybe it was time to recognize those people that had fought that battle, laid down their lives, were injured and such. Jim Evans was given the Medal of Valor. Andy Delgado, Chuck Hill, and myself got the Medal of Courage. It's kind of like a silver star. The gold star, or the gold heart, is like the Purple Heart for being injured in combat. So I got those two, and some of the others. I think Wayne McDaniel's got the Gold Heart.
Glenn Blasky.
Joe got the Gold Heart, but Blasky got the Gold Heart. Yeah, all of us that were wounded got the Gold Heart. So it's nice that got resolved. I have to say that it kind of left a little sour note that when you have that big of a event take place, that not remembering or recognizing those that were willing to sacrifice, life, limb, and death to bring these people to justice, we're never recognized for that. But today we are. We've had a 20-year reunion. We've had a 30-year reunion, and hopefully maybe there'll be a 40-year reunion.
Suspects Belisario Delgado, age 17, died at the scene. Killed by one of only 4 shots Deputy Glenn Blasky managed to fire while under a barrage of bullets. Manny Delgado was killed by law enforcement when he refused to surrender in Lytle Creek. George Smith is serving life without the possibility of parole at California State Prison in Cochran. Christopher Harvin is serving life without the possibility of parole at California State Prison, Vacaville. Russell Harvin is also serving life without the possibility of parole in California State Prison in Lancaster, California. More importantly, the deputies involved in the gun battle were all awarded medals of honor for their courage and bravery that day. Deputy Evans was survived by his wife Mary and 6 children. He was also survived by his parents, 2 brothers, and 1 sister. Deputy Evans had served in the U.S. Army as a ranger and had been awarded the Army's Medal of Valor. In 2002, the Riverside Sheriff's Department presented the Medal of Valor to Mary and her son James Jr. Thank you for listening to this episode of Haunting History Podcast. Be sure to like, follow, and comment on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Haunting History Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to all your favorites. Visit our website at hauntinghistorypodcast.com for more information on each episode. Until next time, I'm Kat, and remember, the living are far scarier than any ghost.
Each of us has a purpose. We are destined to do something meaningful, not only to support our loved ones, but to positively impact our communities throughout the country. What do you think a private Christian education looks like? Grand Canyon University offers over 175 high-quality online programs across 9 colleges. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Visit gcu.edu.